Well, there we are. So, this week I missed the Tuesday instead of the Friday, but we're here on Friday. We're working toward getting everything back in order for twice a week streaming, but it might be a while. So, I've got some bugs to fix, some of which I forgot what the actual bugs are. Not gonna lie. So we might also just do a little bit of just playing through and testing stuff as we go along. But I've got a couple of things noted down right off the bat. A couple of them that are going to be fairly easy to do, to be fair. Because I have a couple of issues here. For instance, when I go to the persistent world and I die in gameplay, I have this code that will spawn in a experience orb drop at the last known save location before I died, which is all well and good. It does that, but it doesn't register being picked up, which is to say that it does pick up the experience and it grants you the experience. It destroys itself, but then if you leave the room where it spawned and you re-enter it, it doesn't know that it's already been picked up and it respawns. So if you die with like 1,000 XP and you go back, you can infinitely farm that 1,000 experience like death drop. Obviously, don't want that to be happening. So I'll real quick show you that, just so that you know what we're working on. That's going to be a fairly easy one. And then I have my skill tree navigation thing. The cursor for that is a little weird and kind of drifts off on its own. I found yesterday while I was recording some footage. So that's not great. I don't know what the issue is there, so that might actually take a while to figure out, all things considered. But that's probably going to be the majority of what we end up doing if I don't super quickly figure it out. But it's been a while since I made... like a couple of weeks since I made that code, so I don't know. It's a bit of a mess. We also have the issue that, okay, so now you can see I died, I dropped my experience, and there it remembers the last point that I was at before combat started, so I can pick that back up. It destroys it all good, all well, but if I leave the room and then re-enter, we indeed have the not a bug, it's a feature of being able to infinitely recollect it, which is not good, not very good. So yeah, we also have the issue with items in the quick menu. I think that's going to be fairly easy to solve as well, but if I go up and pick up an item here, this potion for instance, I can equip that to my player. And when I use it from like this item menu, which is grayed out right now because I don't have any items, it uses it up and all is well and good. The issue comes in because I also have this quick menu. So if I equip this in here, you will note that my actual inventory, I don't have any of these potions equipped. So I shouldn't be able to use them. If I go in here, I don't have any potions equipped, so I shouldn't be able to use them. But I can still... if I have any damage, that is, I can still use this potion from the quick menu. So what it does is instead of sampling your inventory and making it like use one from there, it just runs the code from the potion asset like directly. You see, I can just do this, and I can only do it once as well. That's actually interesting. Why can I only do it once? So it actually... oh, I know what's happening. So it does actually use your inventory, but it samples the wrong inventory, most likely. I think that's the whole issue. I think it's just using the wrong inventory. Because if I go back into inventory now, yeah, it used up the thing from my inventory. What it should be doing is just use it from my equip slots. Okay, so that's going to be a fairly easy thing to fix. So those are a couple of things that we're going to be looking at. And then we have the skill tree cursor thing that also is happening. I don't know what's going wrong with that. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to easily replicate it. Because if I'm not, I don't know if we're going to be looking at it too deep here today. I've also I've been getting a little sick. I think you can probably hear it in my voice. My throat is just not agreeing with me, which is what the fuck, man. What the actual fuck? Okay. Some stuff just fell down behind me. That's fine. That's okay. I don't know why, but it did. So here we are. So yeah, my voice might be a little messed up, which is also why I wasn't live on Tuesday. Because I was busy doing other stuff. And I didn't really feel like starting a stream while my throat was not like super well. Anyway, let's go to the UI, because that's where most of our stuff is gonna happen. Also, well, no, actually, we have the UI and we have the XP or pickup. Those are the first two things that we're gonna be fixing. So in here we have our context menu, which is an empty folder. Okay. Is it in the HUD? Context menu. Right, there we go. Let's just see in here. Also, I've got some neighbors that have been like doing lots of construction lately. I don't know if you can hear it. I think my noise cancelling will probably cancel it out, but it's been so annoying to record videos with those people literally like sawing and drilling and doing stuff like 6 days a week, off and on, 10 hours a day. If I just knew when they were going to do it, I could record around it, but it's just anytime I start up OBS, they suddenly have the impulse to start making noise. It's really annoying. So yeah, we have these context shortcuts things, right? Which does a shortcut action, and do shortcut action checks for a consumable item. It queries the inventory. So what it should do is it should query, I don't know what I called that component. So that's a bit awkward. Let's go check that out. Yeah, I think this is item slots. Yeah, so I've got the inventory, I've got the item slots, which was not declared in C++ for some reason. Probably should do that. Oh well. And then I've got charms, which is effectively just equipment. Has 3 different components here. And it should just check the item slots. So if I get item slots, this should be as easy as just moving from this to this. And then it should work. Now, it also probably should display how many potions you have, and probably grey out the... Yeah, probably should grey out the text if you have 0 potions in your equipment slots. That's what I'm thinking. But first, let's see if this is indeed as easy as it is to fix that. Because after that, we can build upon this. Sometimes it's good that things are buggy because it forces you to look at something and improve it as a whole, instead of just only fixing a small issue. So I'm not going to bother with any of this combat encounter stuff. Do excuse the dodge sound, maybe getting a little grating throughout this. There's been a lot of sound work done, and I haven't had like a huge amount of time to play around with it. I found that the dodge sound gets a little annoying as you use it a lot, so I'll need to like either look at that myself or talk to the guy who's been doing this sound with me to see if we can like tone that down a little bit. But you're gonna have to kind of deal with that for now. So inventory, right? Potion, sure. Character, if I go and try equip this potion to a shortcut key, can I use it? Is the question. the answer is... I need to get damage first. The answer is I can in fact not use it, which is good. That's what we want. That's the behavior that I was expecting. Just to make sure that it actually works when I equip it though, we need to go into my inventory, equip, potion. There might be an argument to be made for making like re-equip potions when you have some in your inventory and you get to like a save point or whatever. It's not necessarily something that I have the code structure to support right now. Might be something to look into. And now it does work. Okay, so if I use it from the shortcut menu, my context menu doesn't yet know that it needs to update. That seems doable though. Right, because I have this event graph here where I just... Surely I have a update items. Yeah, I can just run that after shortcut action, query inventory, use item, and then update items. And that should be everything there is to that, I think. Don't need to do that for magic, because obviously using a magic spell doesn't use up your ability to use that magic spell. Just uses some MP, which another thing that I actually need to look at is healing doesn't take MP. It just straight up doesn't. You can just heal infinitely. Which is slightly annoying, maybe? Well, it's not annoying. It's actually really nice for gameplay purposes. It's just... It shouldn't be that way. I don't think I need to explain why. Infinite healing is probably not what we are looking at. So yeah, just one more check here. Inventory, potion, equip. That's in the items. Then I want to go into my character, shortcuts. Oh. Yeah, that's a good point. It tries to sample items from my inventory to apply shortcuts, to apply to shortcuts. So that's also something that I'm probably going to need to just use the other component for. Because is there any reason to list things for both inventories? Like a list, there probably is an argument to be made, right? There probably is an argument to be made for being able to equip to shortcuts items that are just in your inventory that are not currently equipped. So you can set those up and then equip them whenever you want. I also think that we probably should maybe have like a auto re-equip feature. If we're going to do that as well, because then we can pre-set them up. Not something I'm going to look at right now, I don't think. But definitely that feels like something we'll probably want to be looking into sooner rather than later. But for now, let's go into which one even is this. I've got pause menus. Abilities? Is it an abilities? No. We're being inventory. Character menu. There we go. This is a bit of a mess of a widget blueprint. Yeah. So this is refresh shortcut texts. Don't need to do that. Generate shortcut options. Yeah, so this takes in the inventory. Which I suppose is exposed on spawn. Nope. on activated, we get the inventory. Okay, so we can just get the item equips as well. Get item slots. Let's promote that to a variable as well, or won't we? And then we'll just put in item slot there, and I guess... Let's see what we do here, because all of this is just adding in an entire inventory worth of stuff. So maybe what we do, just to future-proof this a little bit, is we make this into its own function. Just like that. Right, collapse a function. Why won't you let me collapse a function? Seriously, why? Assign listing clicks cannot be... Oh, okay, yeah. No, but it should be able to. It should be able to. It's weird. Well, we can just make it a custom event. Add items from inventory. And then the inventory itself is going to be the input parameter. And we add items from inventory for maybe the normal inventory, but definitely for the item slots. So yeah, let's just move this. Well, we can keep it there actually. And then the item slots is what we're going to be placing here instead. So potentially what we could easily do is also make it sample from the inventory itself. If we really wanted it to, but for now, we can... I thought you could just disable a node temporarily. Did I just make that up? Is that not a thing? That might not be a thing. Okay, never mind. We'll just keep this here in case we want to work with that in the future. Thanks so much for the tutorials. They're very useful. I'm very glad to hear that they're very useful. That's what I make them for. Okay. So now it should sample them from the item slots, which I don't know, man. It seems like that's going to be kind of confusing in itself, isn't it? It might actually be less confusing, because if you don't see it in there in the shortcuts, you won't like try to equip something that you don't have, that you can't use, because what you might otherwise have, but again, this kind of gets solved if I have a auto-equipping feature. What you might otherwise have is a system... I'm only streaming on YouTube at the moment. I've done Twitch in the past as well, but it's always a headache to dual stream. So I'm not doing that anymore. I might again in the future, but for the time being, especially since Twitch also, again, at least last time I did it, might have changed in the meantime, I doubt it. Twitch has this issue with if you low in viewership, it just like doesn't give you a lot of like server allocation, it seems like. And what that results in is viewership within a decent region of where you're streaming from in my case, the Netherlands. So like Northern Europe will have no problems watching. If somebody's watching from like the US or anywhere in like America or further down like Asia or whatever, unless there is a actually like let's bother with this number of people watching your stream, like your stream doesn't get like relayed through like other servers within like Twitch's own network, or like between the like IPS, right? So effectively, if somebody from the US wants to watch me on Twitch, they are connecting to a stream getting sent from a server in like either Amsterdam or like Paris or something like that, which sucks. Obviously, if Twitch does deal with that, there's more of a delay because they're sending it from like their data center in Amsterdam to like their data center in like LA or whatever. But from the viewer experience, it's a lot smoother, and Twitch is kind of fucky with that, and I don't like that. Again, that's from what I understand, and from like a year ago, so that might be different now. It might also just be a wrong understanding. But there's also the fact that dual streaming is just a huge pain in the ass. So either I need to like upload twice the amount of data for streaming, or I need to relay it through a like third-party service, and those third-party services are all kind of like shit as well. Oh, I already did that. Because most of them don't even take PayPal for payment, for one, which is annoying. And a lot of them also just... I used Restream for a while, which was good, but that doesn't take PayPal. Then I used some other services which have like very bad interfaces. I don't like it. I just don't like it. So yeah, I can't equip through this now, but if I go into the inventory and I actually equip the potion, then in the shortcut menu, it actually shows up. Right? That's good. Then I have my item in there. Let's go get damaged and use it. And then it's also gone from there, and I can't use it again because it's just gone from the inventory. Fantastic. Okay. So that's one issue solved. It does make me think about how I'm going to deal with that inventory, that auto re-equipping potentially. I don't think usable items are going to be like a huge thing necessarily in game. Like, I could expand on that. Right now, the idea is that we have like potions, high potions, copyright safe Athos. I don't know, is Aether like a thing that's copyrighted? I don't know. And like a high version of that, and the same with Alexos. Once again, maybe change the name to like not be too Final Fantasy with it. So that's like 6 items in total in the entire game, and I'm kind of thinking of adding in items to temporarily boost your strength as well, so that you do like double damage for 30 seconds. Potentially like a super expensive item that gives you invincibility for a period of time, maybe. Like double MP recharge on hits is an item that I could make. I could make items that are like one-off usable versions of the spells in the game. That one I'm not entirely sure about if I wanna, but I could. Super easy to implement that. So maybe the items will become a little bit more relevant. I just don't know yet, okay? Can use items from the menu without... Yeah, okay, so we completed that. Then next up, there's 2 things that I want to do here. Number 1 is I want to make a change to my thingamajig. My skill tree. So I kind of figured that starting the game without healing at all is bad. I need to start the game with the ability to heal. but then I probably don't want to be giving out an HP upgrade like for the first thing ever. So what we'll probably do is I'll probably make this one empty. Also make it free. I don't know if this is... I don't know if just having nothing makes it free, actually. So we're going to keep it at 100 soul for now. And I'm going to get rid of this node over here. Just going to go right into there. And right into there. And I'm just going to give you the ability to heal by default. Which I think is driven by a data table, maybe? Probably in the data folder. That would make sense. Data. Player spells. So I think it should be as easy as just going in here and saying heal, and your level is just 1. That should give me by default, I think. And granted to true. I think that will by default just give me my heal ability, like pre-equipped and all that kind of stuff. Or it will not. So it doesn't pre-equip it. So that's not fantastic. Because I think I would very much like it to be pre-equipped, to be honest. I think I would even like it to be preset on a shortcut. If I can do that. Like if I can just set a preset to the like heal ability there. And then how do we... We might need to change a little bit of code around here to make this work. And this is why you don't house major parts of your code on UI elements. But this should be easy enough to fix, I think. Because what we do is we have this pause menu for abilities. I think it's this one. So all that we do here is actually nothing, because it's the ability list item that does this stuff. So this does the removability from shortcuts. Yeah, so this also probably should be on the player, to be honest. So can I just take this and put it in here? I seem to be able to. Great. That's as easy as that goes, I guess. So we don't need to like get this. We can just get rid of that. Yeah, great. And then everywhere we use this, we just use the player version instead. Where even, what even is going on here? Oh, there we go. Right, no? Can I just please add this thing back? Thank you. So yeah, when this input action is triggered, what we do is we remove this from shortcuts, probably just on constructs, like save this to a variable as well. Because I feel like we're going to need a reference to that thing more often. Remove ability from shortcuts. Just moving it there so that we have the capability of doing that outside of the context of the UI. Because we might be needing that at some point, right? We might want to be able to take away an ability and not have the UI open to run code from the UI. Again, this is why you want to mostly only have your UI like run code that exists elsewhere. This is just kind of badly coded in a lot of ways. So when we set this thing as granted, this only updates anything visually, so that is fine. Call listing clicked. Sure. Yeah, okay, so here what we do is, let's go through this one step at a time, because partly I want to explain it to you guys, and partly I need to remind myself of what the hell is happening in this thing. So we first toggle check toggle icon is true. I don't know what that does, but if it is false, we just emit the listing clicked. If it is true, we do all this other stuff. So I think this toggle icon is just whether or not this image exists. Because for some of them, it might not. I don't know why it wouldn't. But apparently I set it up so that it can have that be invisible. I don't know why. So if that toggle is visible, what we do is we check whether or not the ability is currently granted. If it is currently granted, we ungrant it, which means that if it is in our shortcuts for our abilities, we remove it from our shortcuts, and then we clear the ability, and then we update this thing on whether or not it is granted now. We also should move that to the player. So we can quite simply do that. Remove granted ability. And that should be as easy as just getting this. It's going to be our ability system component. And then we keep a handle to that ability on the object that is responsible for this. So that then gets cleared. So again, instead of that, we can remove granted ability with this handle, and that fixes a bunch of stuff there. And we can set it visually to not be granted anymore either. So that is the taking away of the abilities. Now this lot down here is all about setting the abilities to like grant them. So if the ability is not yet granted, clicking on this will attempt to obviously grant the ability. So before we do anything else, we check the, let's skip this cast because we don't need it anymore. We check if our currently used AP, which is a function that just checks, hey, all of our abilities, count up every ability that is considered granted, keep track of its AP. ability points. And we add to that our cost of the ability that we're trying to apply. And this is the system that if you've seen my video on blueprint structs and why they're a little weird, and why I like using objects even for just like data, this is why, right? Because this ability button, aside from the fact that that just contains too much execution code, but it needs a bunch of information about the ability that it represents. And if this was a struct, there would now be a separate instance, so it'd be kind of messed up and would be easy to like desync them. Now that it's just an object reference, they both refer to the same object. It's just much preferable. Again, in C++, not an issue because you can just make a pointer to a struct instead, but that's another thing we can do. So yeah, we get from the ability that this represents the AP cost for it, and we add that to the currently used AP cost. We then check if that is still less than our max AP. If it is not, we set our click success to being false, and that just kind of terminates. So that is fine. This doesn't need to exist necessarily on the player. What comes next, though, probably should. Because again, we get the player pawn's ability system component, and then we give the ability. And that it's actually interesting to think about. Because if we move this to the player, do we still need this to be an object? Probably good to have that, yeah. Yeah, because we're still reading from the same thing. But this could just be an index, and we could get it from the array. It doesn't matter. This is fine. Yeah, this is fine. So grant ability, add granted ability is what we'll call that. And add granted ability will just give the ability did you make those events in C++? Which ones? Like on added. I don't know which exactly we're referring to, but if we're talking about like anything in the UI here, no. This is all blueprint stuff. I prefer making anything UI related in Blueprint because it's just a pain to do it in C++. Like input trigger and stuff. Oh, this. No, that just exists as part of the parent blueprint. So this is my own button class, which is effectively an override of, well, this is an override of a C++ class because I needed to something with focus and common UI, and it's a little fucked. But more or less, this is just my own like composite button that has its own way of like highlighting and being clicked and that kind of stuff. Just building upon the built-in Unreal button. And the input action triggered event is just a part of common UI itself. And then I have a couple of other things, like when they're added to focus path, I can also manually like add fake focus and remove that focus without them actually being officially in the focus path, that kind of stuff. But all those events are mostly just like this action trigger just is provided by common UI. And I have some of my own like implementation on what that should do when it is triggered, obviously. And then the ability list item just takes that same event and gives its own code to that. You know, with these button bases, you can scale them in, let's say, a menu. You add it to that. Yeah. Yeah, so this is just this is just a widget like anything else, right? So if I add this to, a matter of fact, I do add them to a bunch of places. If I just start up the game, you can see like these are just those buttons with their own like text in them and whatever, all with their own functions mapped to being activated. Then in here they have different sizes because they have like a different setup in the layout. If I go to, for instance, my character, these are first like 2 of those custom buttons, and within them are more boxes with more buttons. So yeah, those widgets, the custom button widget that I made, can be scaled up and down however you like. The edges kind of are still weird. I'm still trying to figure out why. The like 9 slice tiling is weird. I don't know why. It's kind of messed up. So this give ability and then set struct member. Try activate ability. All this probably should be a function on the, yeah, so I already made the function that just takes in the object for the ability object. There's quite a bit to still like work on with the UI for the game. A bunch of it is still placeholder. That obviously, yeah, that doesn't work yet. But I've done quite a lot of work to make it now actually like a good base to build up on, hopefully. So that everything there should just work. And then we have these, this is a return value, I guess. Let me just put these side by side real quick so I can reference them. So we check whether or not the ability was granted. If this is false, okay, so this just always goes to return right away. And I guess that always means that... Oh. Yeah, okay. So this is what we do. This always returns true, and this returns whether or not it was actually activated. How long have you been doing Unreal Engine for? I think it's about 5 years, maybe, something like that. Been working on this game for 3, roughly, more or less. Not full time, obviously. Goes for both of those. I haven't been working full time for 5 years in Unreal. Some weeks I definitely make like full time ish hours, but by far most weeks I don't. So let's hook this up to this. Oh, no, you still need to exist. Everything here should be able to just go. See, that makes things a little bit smoother on the UI side of things. And the whole reason that I'm doing this, lest we forget, is because now I have the ability to provide in an ability to unlock objects and granted outside of the UI context. But how am I going to get the object representing the ability that I want to grant? That is a fantastic question. I don't know. Let's see, we have somewhere in here, we have like initialize abilities or something, right? Surely we do. Did I do it in C++? I might have done it in C++. Interact with the world? No, that's not it. It's not give evil abilities, right? No. Where is it? Oh, set up ability object unlocks. Okay, so yeah. We have these arrays. So I guess what I want to do is I want to get ability unlock object and just check both of these for each loop. Get the abilities from it. Don't promise it to a variable, that's unnecessary. And I think all that I really need to do is do I check the level as well? The handle is only relevant if the ability's actually been granted. So I can't do that. I don't think the level is really going to be that relevant to check this on, because we're not going to have the same ability in this list twice with different levels, are we? We might have some abilities twice. I don't think we will, but we could. So I think what we need to do is there's a couple of things that we need to check. First and foremost, obviously the most important thing is we need to be able to check based on class. So we check ability class, right? Then the level I'm going to ignore, but I do want to be able to check whether or not it is granted. In case I want to look for specifically an ability that currently is granted or currently is not granted. That seems like a useful thing to be able to check. So we want to check, hey, is this equal to this? And if these both are true, so we do an AND boolean, then we return that specific ability. Return node, we return this. Strictly speaking, could make this into a function of its own, because we're going to be doing this twice. Would be going to need if you could make like a blueprint lambda or something like that, where I can just wrap this within like a local function, more or less. Well, maybe I can. Can I just... If I collapse nodes... and I remove, let's say, this. Well, I can't do that. And I remove this. I'm just experimenting at this point to check this. We have, okay, so these are just two separate collapsed node graphs, so those don't refer to the same thing anymore. Oh well. Just figured that might be interesting to be able to do. But actually we cannot. Well, we can, but we shouldn't make this a separate function because we're relying on early returning to decide whether or not we found anything. So we'll just do the same thing twice. First through the spells, then through the passives. If we make it to the end of the passives, we've gone through everything, so we haven't found anything. So return a null object. I was going to add another found ability. I was going to add another output here for a bool, whether or not we found anything. But we can just check whether or not this is a valid object that we get returned. So that's wholly unnecessary. So all that out of the way, now we should be equipped, hopefully, in theory, to go back in. Let's do this in give default abilities. Just at the end of this massive string. I need to clean this up at some point as well. We get the ability unlock object from the heal ability. I think it's just gameplay ability heal, right? Gives me a good opportunity to dive into this in a moment as well, because we need to check some shit there. But we check this, we check if this is a valid object. If it is not valid, I'm actually going to print string real quick and breakpoint, just so that I know that something is going wrong. But if it is a valid object, we just need to add grant ability with that object. And that should auto grant us that ability. Yes. I'm actually going to set this thing back to level 0 by default. Because I think what I maybe want to do instead is check out increase magic, increase strength, spells, heal. So we unlock skill. Well, actually, I think maybe because we're checking if this ability to unlock is already unlocked. We're also checking the AP here. We can just keep that. So yeah, right now what we're doing is through the UI, we have a reference to that heal asset, like that ability asset. Then that ability asset itself can go back to the player and say, hey, unlock me, right? So it kind of seems like it makes sense for this to be the other way around. So that way, the player can just say, hey, this ability asset, I want to give myself that. Because right now I don't have a way to, without a like pre-existing reference that's provided by the UI in this case, without that pre-existing asset, I don't have a way to grant myself an ability based on, well, an asset, like a data asset. So what we should do is let's call this add ability level. Or, well, no. There's two different things going on here because this is ability. Oh no, this is just the ability unlocking. It's not the granting. That, yeah, makes sense. So add ability level is what we'll call that. And that pretty much just takes all this, puts it in there. And this is we'll need to do this for the spells as well as the passives, maybe. Most of the time the spells probably will be enough. But if it, again, doesn't find anything in spells, it probably should check the passives. That seems like it's probably a good idea to do. So I'll copy this over in a moment. And that will take in a, what did I call this? Spell skill. Your videos explaining a save system actually work. I mean, hopefully they do, yeah. Saving data is a bit of a headache to like wrap your head around, though, for sure. Ability asset, or let's call it skill asset, I think. Better way to put that. Get ability to unlock. Check if it's equal to that ability. I think that's everything, right? Because everything else is getting checked from the array here. I just saw your name and I remembered that I was supposed to look at your game. I entirely forgot, so I'm gonna try to do that this weekend. And get back to you about that. I did flag it in my like mailbox, I think. It's just been a hell of a week. But yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna still do that. Just I forgot. Which isn't very nice. And then I guess we just return this without any return value. Do we need a return value? I don't think we need a return value. Could return a bool, I guess. No really use in doing that. So yeah, so we add the ability level. So instead of this being a thing that is the responsibility of the skill asset, event unlock skill, it'll be the other way around. It will be skill tree node info. Is that what I'm looking at? Nope. skill tree node. That's probably what I'm looking at. This has unlock node. We first check on the unlock asset if it can be unlocked. That's still fine to happen on that asset, I guess. Yeah, that should be. Then we apply the unlock cost. Again, I think that's fine to do on the asset. Because that's even a separate asset from the skill asset, right? So that's very much a... If we ever want to like script out giving an ability or whatever in any sort of way, like we're doing right now for the heal ability, but we might be looking into like doing that for defeating a boss or picking it up in the world or anything like that. That's not going to have like a cost associated with it. So I don't necessarily think that we need to... Maybe we should. We probably should, just in case, right? So we check this unlock asset as well. And we can just give in a null value there if we don't want to apply a cost. But this way, somehow, some way, we can first check, hey, do we have the cost for it? Because maybe we do want to have something in world where we need to pay a certain cost to access it, right? So yeah, that makes sense to me. So node unlock assets. We can even use this wider than just to unlock nodes, to be honest. This is just a check stuff kind of thing. But then we can like unlock skill. And now it becomes relevant to actually have a return value here as well. Because if we cannot unlock this skill, we probably want to send that back as a return value. So let's return. This is just the quickest way to get a bool there. I return that as false, and then if either of these is the end of the path, we return true. And then I guess if we get to the end of all this, we also, just in case, want to return false, because clearly we didn't actually unlock anything. And then we want to apply unlock costs. Sure. I think the unlock cost just takes in the player in my case. Unlock assets. Yeah, this just takes in the player. Is there any reason that I should take anything in that's not the player? Not really. But I'm coding this to work as a plugin as well. So that's why it's a generic object, because maybe you want to give in just a generic data object, right? So it's just for extensibility reasons, I guess. This has turned from bug fixing into refactoring like super quick. But I guess here we are. Yeah, so this should just in both cases be reference to self. And then I guess we also want to like section this off into its own function, because this seems like it's useful to be able to reuse. I guess it doesn't like me adding in that. So we collapse to function. Why not? Found too many output connections in selection. Sure, man. Try unlock. Test unlock assets. I don't know what to call this. Both of these should just be, yeah. Unlock assets. This doesn't need to exist. And then we just return can unlock, which will be false if this is false because we cannot unlock. If so, we can, and we did. All right, we got in there. So now we have this unlock asset thing, which again, this is gonna go into a branch and just return false for this as well, if that's false. Otherwise, we move on to the rest. So now the player itself can check whether or not it can unlock something, rather than something externally having to do that for the player. And then it does all this stuff where it just updates whatever skill asset we give into it by 1 level, if it can. To be fair, maybe what we want to do is actually do it here, checking if we can unlock or not. And the reason that I say that is because otherwise we might end up in a situation where we do the check whether or not we can unlock something, go through the entire arrays and find that we didn't actually upgrade anything, either because it didn't find whatever we were trying to look for because we made a mistake somewhere, or otherwise, maybe we already have that ability at its maximum level, which again, this checks for whether or not we can level it up still, and only goes through this branch if we found the ability and the ability's level is less than its maximum level. Only at that point should we test whether or not we can actually like unlock it based on any cost. Because otherwise we might start applying costs to things that aren't actually changing anything about the gameplay. So that seems not ideal if we were to do that. Our target itself, unlock assets, is this one. And I just remembered one more thing. We also need to check if this asset is valid, because only if it is valid do we even check any of this at all. If this unlock asset thing is not valid to begin with, we just immediately return true, because that's effectively just a free upgrade. Okay, so all that, again, for the pure purpose of going back in here somewhere, not in there, but I think it is in give default abilities, to be able to just test if we can unlock the ability, which we don't need to do in this case, actually. Oh, but we need to add an ability. So what is add granted ability? Oh, that just adds an ability based on objects. Right. So why did we do any of this? So we get the ability to unlock. Oh, that's it. Yeah. So before we get the ability to unlock, what we actually need is we need to add an ability level to it. So we need to add a level to our healing ability. Then we can actually check for a healing ability that is not currently granted. And then we can add that as a granted ability. And we're not going to be taking an unlock asset for any of that. Okay. Let's save all of that. And then we also will need to go back into, I think it is my skill tree node. Because instead of doing all this here, what we need to do is we first need to have a reference to the player, which we do not. Didn't I make that a moment ago? I thought I did. Is that in the ability list that I did that? Well, it doesn't matter. On construct, I guess we'll just do all that. I'll get player pawn. And just keep that around as a variable. Probably could just make that an expose on spawn, but I don't feel like it. So this is on node unlock. We first check that, then we, okay, so this is just add ability level, right? So we check the unlock assets. Then we unlock the skill with the skill assets. Why not? Because this is the blueprint skill assets, sure. Just make that the base skill asset, which means we don't have that. Does it matter? I'm just going to make this a blueprint skill asset, BP skill. So what is your problem right now? Skill assets. What? Why are you being annoying about this? Am I losing my mind? Oh, this is, yeah, okay. So that is the issue. This is specifically a ability skill, I think, or what did I call it? Ability spell asset. Spell skill. So is there a difference between spell and ability aside from which array that it checks it? I really am starting to think that making those two arrays makes no sense. The more I work with it, the more I'm like, why did I do that? That's really dumb. Because yeah, this is the exact same card, it just checks a different array. I guess it means that I don't have to check one array if I'm checking the other one. There is something there, maybe. They both even take in just a basic, like, cost gameplay ability. They just literally do the same thing, aside from taking a look at a different array. Yeah, I'm just gonna... make all of these abilities. Just gonna change those over to being spell types as well. Or maybe I should make those other one abilities, but for now let's just all call them BP spell. And hope that that doesn't crash Unreal. Because I feel like it might. It's taking a minute. Certainly is. And... well, it crashed there for a moment. Doesn't seem like it did. Does it still maintain the values everywhere? It does. Gas requires C++, right? A little bit, but not that much. There's a couple of things that are C++ only. You need to set up well, you don't need to set up the component and the attributes in C++, but you probably want to. Well, the attributes you need to set up in C++, as far as I know. The component you'll probably want to set up in C++ because you have a interface for getting the ability system component, which is super useful to be able to use. But that's only exposed to C++. That doesn't have blueprint exposure. And there's a bunch of stuff that might rely on that being a thing, now that I think about it. So you'll definitely want to set up your ability system component and the interface for getting it within C++. You set up your attribute sets in C++. That doesn't seem to have a blueprint version for it yet. Doesn't seem like it's going to either, to be honest. And then that comes with a couple of things like being able to set up event dispatches delegates for your attributes as well. So you can check when your attribute, like before it changes, after it changes, before an effect takes place, after an effect takes place, all those kind of things. There's delegates for those to check certain things. So what you can do is after a effect takes place, you can check your is it HP? Did I change my HP specifically? And then you can check, okay, did my HP change to a value of 0 or below? And like that, you can have a built-in way of checking for death within, for instance, your attribute set itself, so that the characters don't have to have the code for that. They just look out for that event on your attribute set itself, especially if you build that in like a basic attribute set that your player and your NPCs both can use. Saves you a base of like replicating code, and all that is C++ stuff because it's specifically coded directly onto the attribute set. But after doing all those things, which sounds like a lot right now because I'm rambling, but it really isn't that much. The rest of the point of the gameplay ability system is to be very blueprint friendly. So there's a couple of things that require setup in C++. There's a couple of things like the gameplay execution effect classes or whatever they're called that seem to work better with C++, but I actually find myself not using those in practical terms. Just normal gameplay effects work fine. And after that, the like main body of the gameplay ability system, the whole idea is that you have blueprint to script out how your abilities should behave, right? You can, there's a lot of like latent nodes, like delays, do this and then wait for this and that kind of stuff, which works so much more powerfully within Blueprint than it does in C++. Obviously, you can write your abilities in C++ if you want to. At the end of the day, those are just delegates that you can like subscribe to. But the idea at that point is that it gives people who aren't into C++, like the designers, gameplay designers of your game, if you have a development team, the ability to script out these abilities in a fairly complex way without needing to dive into the C++ code. The entire system is set up to actually facilitate lots of blueprint use. But it isn't pure blueprints if you're doing everything by yourself. You do need a little C++ to set it up, but it's not like the plugin as you're working with it, like the framework as you're working with it, you're not going to be touching that C++ code like almost ever after setting it up. So yeah, all that. Let's save those things. And then I guess this one can go. Asset ability skill. Oh yeah, that's nothing else is referencing it anymore. That's good. All right, that's probably going to make a couple of things not compile, I would imagine. Or maybe that's actually not an issue. We'll see. Nothing was referencing it anymore, it seems like, so it's probably fine. So let's get back to the player. As I compile thing here. Oh yeah, we have. Sure. So the skill asset now is just, yeah, it just takes in any of these. Adds an ability level. I'm going to be doing that to the healing ability once again. No unlock assets. Does it maybe make sense to do this based on the... No, maybe not. No, not necessarily. I was thinking, does it make sense to make this also take in a skill asset? But this is specifically talking about like the abilities that they represent, so probably doesn't make sense to do. All right, that means we go back into my skill tree stuff and open up this again, because that's what we were working on, I believe. So we add the ability level to this skill asset, which still is just a normal skill asset reference. So the issue is that this, yeah, this should... So this is specifically for abilities. Whereas we also have skill nodes that don't give abilities but just give stat upgrades. Those still use this asset type. So we can't upgrade this. So that means that we do need to cast this to like blueprint spell skill. Or this needs to take in a thing. I think that makes more sense. Let's do that. So let's make a unlock skill. And what we'll do is we'll add ability level here. This just takes in a skill asset and a unlock asset. This might not be the best way to do it either. Let's see. We'll see. I'll just do normal skill asset, that's fine. And I'll just cast this to blueprint spell skill. Because then we can just make it do that all. And if it is not a spell skill, what it'll do instead is... I guess we test unlock assets, and then we just, based on that, branch. We just run whatever else unlock skill does, which takes in if we're going to be doing that, do we really need all this to exist on the player? No. No, we don't. All that we needed to do was this. And then the upgrade actor, of course, will just be self. Because this can just still remain on here. So we massively overcomplicated all this. Well, no, not quite. Not quite. Because the one thing that implementation that we just made gives us is being able to first check if we find the ability and if it is upgradable before applying the cost. But that also seems like a just don't be stupid type of deal on my end, not even on the player's end. Just why would that ever happen if I do my job right? Why would a player ever be able to spend experience on like a level 6 spell if I've only programmed up to level 5 spells? That means that I've put in one spell upgrade too many for that in the game. So why would I need to build in like protection for something that shouldn't be there in the first place, right? Because the way that I've set that up is super roundabout and super weird. So yeah, I don't think that necessarily makes the most sense. So yeah, we can just like unlock skill. And we simply given the unlock assets and the skill assets, and then we can pretty much get rid of all this. Hold on, don't get rid of the skill asset. Pretty much get rid of all this. Just, oh yeah, that was, didn't even disconnect that, didn't need to check. Yeah, so long story short, we now have a way to finally like actually unlock skills outside of the UI context, which is what this was all building toward. Okay. Doesn't compile. Why don't you compile? Because this at ability level doesn't exist. That makes sense because we just want to unlock this skill with no unlock assets. All that we need is healing skill. Then we get the ability object for that, and then we add that as a granted ability. Okay. I think we're back to the point where everything should be hooked up properly and work. Except we're not. Because I guess this runs before the initialize abilities thing. Like the setup ability unlock objects just needs to run first. Is there any reason that it couldn't? No, there's no reason that it couldn't. I'm just kind of thinking about this skills tree thing here, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. So that's tick. That's not begin play. Where's begin play? Begin play. There we go. So we start off by set input mappings, give default abilities is where we start off, right? So I think all that we really need to do is do our setup unlockability objects before that. Because in this, we're trying to get a thing that we're setting up here. And before we were doing that afterward, which obviously is not going to work. Okay, no breakpoints. It's a good start. I have my heal ability by default. It is equipped to the bottom slots. If I go into my skills, that's the wrong thing. If I go into my abilities, it is equipped there. I can unequip it as I please. I do want to test if it actually works without me unequipping and re-equipping it. I want to make sure that it like properly is equipped and everything is like hooked up properly. So yeah, we have heal by default mapped on the bottom face button there. I just need to like go damage myself real quick. Fantastic. And I can heal. Just to be 1000% sure, I can heal from this menu as well. I can. Alright. We have a default ability given. We can heal. As you note, one of the things that I complained about before is that healing doesn't actually take any MP. So let's take a look at why that might be, because I don't know. I thought I'd fixed that because I've looked at this before. And clearly I didn't. Well, I did look at it, but I didn't fix it. So somewhere in here, spell abilities, I guess. So many more abilities than I'm actually going to be using here. Some of them will be condensed into being level 2 or 3 versions of a spell instead. Okay, let's just walk through everything that this does to see if I can find any like logic flaws. We activate the ability. We check once the ability is activated if our health is actually greater than or equal to our max health. If that's true, we immediately end the ability because we don't need to heal. We then check if our mana is greater or equal than 1, meaning that do we have any mana at all. Usually I do this within a commit ability, but the thing is I don't want to commit that cost up front. What I want to do is do the one thing that I kind of really hated about Silksong. Well, there's a couple of things that I hated about Silksong, but one of the things, which there is a fair games argument to be made there, I just found it infuriating, where you can like submit to a heal, which will take a certain amount of time. It takes your silk the moment you press the heal button, then it locks you into fucking place. And if you get hit, you lose the silk that you spent, but you don't get any heal back for it. Now, there is certain like charms or tools according to Silksong, which still do things when you get hit. I think there's one that might deal damage in an area around you when you get hit during a bind, which is what healing is called in Silksong. There's one that just gives you protection from getting hit. It cancels out your heal, but it gives you protection from getting hit. So all of those, it kind of makes sense that okay, you're getting something back for the silk that you expanded. But as a rule, I just find it highly annoying that you can spend something and not get anything in return. Like, if you cancel my heal, that's fine. But why did you take my very limited amount of, like, healing juice, my MP, effectively? It makes the game more precise, it makes the game harder. I don't want to have that in my game. So I specifically want this to still lock the player in place for like a second or so when they commit to being to healing, because I do think that just instant healing indeed is a bit like too OP. You need to find your window where it is safe to heal. That said, if you mess up, the punishment isn't that your heal got messed up and that you wasted your silk or your MP. The punishment is that you got hit and you got extra damage, right? That is punishment enough built in. So what I want is only when you actually commit the heal itself, meaning that at the end of the delay from your press to the actual heal, that is where I want the MP like cost to be committed. That way you don't get that infuriating situation where you don't only not get healed, you don't get healed, you wasted your opportunity and your resource to get healed, and you get damaged, like all on top of each other. I think that's too much. There's a lot of quality of life features in Silksong that disguise themselves as tools. Fucking compass, man. I understand having to unlock maps. I don't like it, but I understand it. Fine, right? You have to spend resources to get your maps. In my game, that's not going to be a thing. But I get why you do that, right? You need to have people like work toward it, and not giving them a map right off the bat means that they are more blind exploring your world. That all makes sense. That's fine. When I have the map, why the fuck does it take a charm slot in Hollow Knight? And why the fuck does it still take a tool slot in Silksong to tell me where I am on the map? Like, this is legitimately borderline an accessibility issue, and obviously these are not games that are too concerned with accessibility because they're brutally difficult. But that's another thing where I'm like, that should just be a basic feature, man. Being able to see where you are on the map. Again, I understand just not giving the map by default. I understand needing to unlock the map. Once you have the map, why the fuck can I not see where I am? Why do I need to give like gameplay flexibility up in order to be able to fucking navigate your map? Makes no sense to me. There's some infuriating things about these games. So, we're 3 nodes in. Mana. It checks if I have the mana. Then it does another check here. I don't know what the fuck it's checking. Why is it checking that all the way over there? What the fuck, man? What even is it checking? Oh, it's checking a second time if my health is less than my base health. And if both are valid. Okay, so it's checking that twice for some reason. Don't need to do that. And we can be fairly certain that health is going to be valid in either case, so we can just get rid of that. Then we cast to the player class, because I want to bind on whenever it is damaged. To be fair, everything that I just rambled about for the gameplay ability system, I could bind to the HP being updated instead of the player being damaged. I'm not, but I could. So yeah, if you get damaged during the ability itself, we also prematurely end the ability. True, the compass is no excuse to take an amulet slot. I also don't get why I can't just use the quill without the map. Like, what's the... That's another thing. That's another thing, right? Like, why do I need to buy a map in order to be able to write on it with another item that I also need to buy, by the way? Like, you can buy the quill to fill in the map with like more details as you go through. what at any point is stopping Hornet or the Knight from using that quill to just draw their own map as they go? 1,000%. Like, I'll just open up my game right now. I'll just show you what I think is better to do. Because it's not like you have the full world map like right on the bat, right? This is my map. Congratulations, you've been to one room. You can see one room. Can you guess what's going to happen when I go through this door? Because if I go through this door, congratulations, you now know about the existence of this room. Should be as easy as that. You don't even have to buy a fucking item for it in my game. I feel like that should be base functionality for a video game in 2025, to be honest. Again, I kind of get not giving players a full map right away, but if your game is about explorability, it should be... there is an argument there that if you give them... No, there isn't. No, never mind. I was going to say there is an argument there. If you give them that quill, they can go into a room and see where the exits to that room are, and it lessens the explorability. But that's what the maps already do. So, but I guess, okay, so the idea is that you don't get that little bit of information unless you've bought the map already. If you just have the quill that draws on the map, it would immediately tell you where the exits to any given room are. There is an argument there, I suppose. I don't think that's a great reason to make your game a bit of a pain in the ass. Silksong hasn't got this issue nearly as much. Hollow Knight is actually kind of difficult to navigate. Because Hollow Knight is, in my experience, just so much less linear, which is great. But it's also makes it a bit of a pain to navigate, and needing to spend the charm slot on your compass, and then getting the maps and getting the quill and all that stuff, it's annoying. But I can certainly see arguments for why that might still like make sense. I just, for my game, I mean, I'm playing up a little bit how annoyed I am by it. Obviously, it's both Hollow Knight, Silksong, amazing games. Not perfect. There's things that I dislike about them, but it's not necessarily like objectively bad. It's just things that I'm doing differently myself, because I don't like those bits. And that's the upside of making your own game, is you can do whatever the fuck you want. Anyway, so yeah, we end the ability if we get damaged. Then we just save that as a reference variable. We also stop our movement immediately, and we disable the player input. Then we spawn a system to show that we are healing. We save that as well because we need to disable it at the end. We also have this montage in case I ever have a healing animation. I don't at the moment. Then we just wait for half a second. I'm actually going to increase this to 75% instead of 55. Because I found that 0.55 is just a little too short. You still have the maps, and they are almost always at the beginning of the area. So what's the point? Yeah, that's exactly 100% the case, right? Like if you don't have the maps, it becomes more like obscured where the exits to a area are. But if you are like a little ahead of the economy, which in Hollow Knight is very doable, and Silksong it's a little more difficult, but if you're a little ahead of the economy and you find the map salesperson, whether that is what's his face or what's her face, I forget both of the names right now. You pretty much get the map to any given area a couple of rooms into the area. So for the most part, while exploring the area, you have a basic layout of each room. So yeah, I I guess for first-time players, there's a good chance that you don't have like enough money and you're not ahead of the economy of the game to be buying all those maps. I know I wasn't, especially in Silksong. Holy hell, I explored most of that game without the maps. But in the end, that just kind of pads out the game time. Also, like 90% of secrets are on the map. I don't know if that's true. There's a lot of things that only become visible on the map once you've actually interacted with them in world. Like a lot of breakable walls and stuff don't show up on the map as exits to an area until you've like broken the wall, which gives even more credence to my argument there of you might as well just give them the map the moment they enter the room, because you can hide those exits anyway, because that's what you do. Like there's entire bosses that are hidden behind things that are not visible initially on the wall in both games. So after waiting that period of time, we deactivate the healing aura. Then we don't wait for a gameplay event, apparently. We immediately going into applying a gameplay effect to self. The gameplay effect is player heal, which takes in a level and increases the attribute base health. That makes sense. And then we mana cost. Oh, I know what the issue is. Mana cost has a custom calculation class that is I might actually still be able to adjust. If I set this cost to 1, does that still just work? That might still just work. Hold on. I'm done ranting about Silksong and Hollow Knight. Just to be very clear, both those games are infinitely better made by 3 people than anything that I could do. Yeah, so let's see, do I heal? I do heal. I still don't have the MP cost, so that doesn't work. So yeah, the issue here is I have a custom calculation class for this. So what we just need to do is, I thought I'd fixed that, but maybe I didn't. I had exactly 1 moment the entire 70-hour playthrough where I was exploring with the map for more than 2 minutes. Like 10 minutes of gameplay, I was feeling lost. But it was a cool feeling. Yeah, I don't particularly like feeling lost personally. I like exploring and I like being rewarded with trying to like figure shit out. But especially the way that these two like Hollow Knight games do it, where they just give you a map and then just don't show you the secret exits on any given map. You get a pretty good middle ground there between, if you have the map, you know where to go for like just the main path through the game, through different dungeons. But a bunch of side paths that lead to upgrades, lead to alternative like entries or exits. Like the in Silksong, you have the alternative way to get into Act 2. Instead of the judge, you can go through the mist, right? If I remember correctly, that mist route is hidden behind either 1 or maybe 2 like secret exits to a map. I'm trying to think. I don't think, no, you need to like get into, you don't need to get into Bilewater, and Bilewater doesn't even have a secret exit or entry now that I think about it. So in I forget the name of the area before Bilewater. Equally as painful though. There's the area where you just need to like hit a wall at some point. There's just like a bit of a corridor that ends in nothing, and there's a breakable wall at the end. And once you do, you get into the mist, and it's an entirely like alternate path into Act 2, which is, I didn't know that until I've completed the game. I didn't take that path. I still haven't fought that boss, to be clear. I took the normal path. But that gives you a good balance of like you can navigate through the main path of the game while still having secrets and explorability. Sinner's Route, that's the name. Thank you. Which I think is pretty good. Personally, I played a lot of the game without the maps because a lot of the time I was just behind on rosaries. But Silksong is pretty playable for the most part without the map. I would argue that Hollow Knight isn't. Hollow Knight is a massive pain in the ass if you don't have the maps. Partly because even though there is a huge amount of variation between the different areas, some of them do lack a little bit of identity compared to others. In like color palettes and that kind of stuff, and Silksong does that a lot better. Again, Silksong also generally just more linear. The boss there is one of the best bosses in the game. From what I understand, it's just a reskin of the Hornet fight, right? From Hollow Knight, more or less. Which is also what I thought the first time that I fought Lace, to be fair. Very quickly decided that, no, this fight is a lot more difficult than any of the Hornet fights. Well, the first Lace isn't. The second one quickly becomes more difficult, and then we have Act 3, which... Oh boy. That's certainly something. Yeah, so I think I'm just gonna do like gameplay effects, subtract MP. And then we, instead of custom calculation class, we just do scalable floats. And we use my generic curve table, linear curve, with a multiplication of -1. That should do it. And then we spawn in more particles, spawn in a sound, and we end the ability. Okay, very roundabout way to fix all that. I don't know why that did something. We've got some common things, but it's pretty different. Okay. Well, I need to get back to completing a couple more fights in Silksong at some point. I decided that I wanted to do the Hollow Knight DLC finally after I complete it. Okay, so now it actually does do the thing. After I completed Silksong, I went back to do the Hollow Knight DLC, so I did a lot of fighting of bosses in Goldhome. Mostly because I'm obviously still working on my own boss fight at the moment, and I just needed like a lot of hours of fighting bosses. So it seemed like a mode, a DLC, that is literally just boss rushes back to back to back to back, and more difficult versions of those bosses seemed like a pretty like good thing for me to engage in. Let's take a look at the XP pickup bug, because I don't think we're going to be looking at the skill tree cursor fuckery, because that's unlikely to be a thing that I can solve today. But the XP pickup should be fairly straightforward to do. Oh, I know what the issue is, I think. The issue is that you No. Okay. Well, I still know what the issue is. The issue is that on begin overlap, which we need to get game instance, cast that to our blueprint game instance, and then get like death level. Well, now we need to set death level to none. That should be everything. Because once we've picked this up, we just need to say, hey, there's no death level. I think that's honestly everything that we're going to need to do for that bug. Sometimes bugs are easy to squash. They're just like stupid little oversights, right? Sometimes they inspire me to rewrite, well, not rewrite, just move a bunch of code. I also need some experience to actually test this out with, so hold the Falcon for a moment. Well, that's fantastic. That's 15 XP. I know we're at it anyway. It resets my souls and my HP before actually going full black screen. It should do that only after the level transition screen. It's a small issue, but still, it's an issue that I want to have fixed, and the XP orb doesn't respawn. So, fantastic, that works. Yeah, so we... Let's see. That's handled in the game instance class for me. Player death. Right, so bind player death respawn. On player killed, we check if death screen is not yet valid. Then we do a death. We push this widget to the stack. So death screen, bind to event respawn. And then we respawn stats, right? So what we actually need to do is make an event dispatcher on screen black. And just move these two things into that. So reset player stats on that. And then after that, we also immediately unbind. From on-screen black. So it only does that once. And then every time we finish the load animation, so fade in end, anytime we do that, we call out on black screen end. That should be all there is to it, I think. It's just one of those things that's a little sloppy, right? Being able to see your HP restore back to full, which it probably even doesn't need that now that I think about it, because you literally get sent to a save point, which will fully restore your HP anyway. So that's probably useless to do. It's just a little bit sloppy to see that like happen in real time. So let's just make sure that that doesn't happen. Yeah, you see, there we go, and there we go. So I do have the 0 souls, I do have the full HP now. It didn't even set me to a save point, so I actually can be sure that it's that code that ran. Now, one thing that I do want to make sure of is but I didn't do anything. One thing that I do want to make sure of is that it doesn't now reset me back to 0 every single time I go through a door. So, can't help myself, need to pick up items. Let's just go through a door and see. It didn't. So, that also works. Great. That's another bug fixed. Let's take a look at the skill tree thing. Just to see if I can spot what it is easily. There's a very good chance that I won't. Make sure everything is saved before I start doing this. The reason that I do it in this level is just because I can easily pick up like 4,000 XP that I put on the ground. I don't know why I didn't just do one orb with a lot of XP, but fuck you, I know. Yeah, so there is this like weird issue, which has something to do with the scaling, I believe, where if I just go like off the deep end here and I go all the way through and unlock a bunch of stuff, like everything works fine. Until I close out and re-enter, and then for some reason it starts doing this, where it just makes the cursor go to the left, and whenever I make it go in any other direction, the cursor itself like snaps back to its like actual position for a second and then just starts going left again. And I feel like that has something to do with the fact that I'm handling the input in a weird way. So it's maybe not going to be easy to fix. But the very least that I can do is... Where do I have that blueprint? Probably, I would guess, in board menus. And then within the map. Within the skill tree. I don't know. Skill tree pan widget. We'll fucking get there, man. No, no, we will not. Does that get dynamically added? Where's my cursor, dude? Where's my cursor? Why does it? Oh, it's use cursor. Okay, yeah. There's map pan widgets, and that's where it's getting added. Probably create cursor widget, panning cursor. Create user widget, that's not create cursor. Somewhere in here. Oh, use cursor is just, it sets the visibility of the thing. No duh. Okay, cursor is just an image. It's not a blueprint on its own, so that's why I couldn't find it. Okay, in that case, we'll just get fake cursor. I don't even think we need to get the fake cursor, to be honest. I just need to know what the input direction that I'm giving it is. So add movement speed, we have our move delta. That's seemingly just getting stuck on like -1 in the X for some reason. Right, so if we just get the move delta and I just print that out every frame. That should give me a little bit of insight as to what's going on. So yeah, this makes sense, right? But if I go into my skill tree, and again, it seems to be happening more when I'm zoomed out, which makes no sense, but like I just don't unlock a bunch of stuff. I don't know if this is relevant to the bug. I doubt it, but here we are. There we go. It just moves. It just moves. But its move delta actually is 0, so it's not the move delta, which is weird. That means it's trying to move to a location. Right, because I have two different things that it can do. It can either automatically move to a given coordinate, or it can move to a delta like compared to itself. So it's doing this move to focus point, most likely. Which again is very testable because we can just move to focus point. And then I guess we can print the target offset to see what it's trying to move to. I'm guessing it's trying to move to 0, 0. I think we don't even need to unlock anything, to be honest. I think we just... It seems to only happen with nodes that are unlocked and a certain like distance away from the center. Because it's not happening here. It might specifically just be that one node. Yeah, it's not happening. So if I... Now it does, but it's not trying to move too, because it's not printing anything. So why the fuck are you moving? And now if I'm zoomed in this much, everything works again. And then when I zoom out, it starts breaking again. And if I zoom in back enough, everything seems to work fine. I think it's something to do with the way that I'm censoring stuff to begin with, but it's not even printing this, which actually that makes sense. Never mind, because this only runs once. I should be checking that here. There you see, so when it is like near or when it's overlapping with one of these other buttons, what it does is it sets its move to like desired location. It sets that to the location of the node that it's overlapping with, so that it does this like snapping to the center of whatever node you're overlapping with. Usually. Sometimes it's offset a little bit. But it seems like right now, okay, so right now it's trying to move to -2580 and -1000 84, right? So let's try to keep that in mind, at least as rough numbers. Because I think that is just the location of the node that I was at. So at that point, I think the issue, it might be, well, it may be with the way that I zoom in and out. Can you just lock the screen at a certain scale and then just scroll? I mean, yeah, but the thing is that I want to be able to zoom in and out. But I think something in my zooming in and out, like code for that widget, is weird. So that might just need to be fixed. But I'm trying to troubleshoot what the issue is to begin with. Because I don't quite understand what the issue is. So I think we're like at this. Instead of zooming. Yeah, so but I want to be able to zoom. So that's the thing. It's just that zooming is somehow messing things up. I don't really understand why. And now it's moving super slowly. I mean, the way that it's like snapping to its location whenever I zoom, also not great. Admittedly, I need to fix that as well. To just zoom in with the cursor's position as like the pivot point. So there's a bit of stuff that I need to need to rework about this anyway. But I would assume this zoom widget, yeah, there's a whole bunch of math that I don't really look forward to revisiting. So whenever I zoom, it sets your render translation back to 0, 0. Which makes sense because... Okay, so the thing happening is that the fake cursor thing that I have here is inside of an overlay. So it doesn't actually move. All that it does is it moves its transform. It moves its where it renders, not where it actually is. Which is fine. That doesn't matter that much. In the end, that half a dozen of one, 6 of the other, whatever. The actual panning widget itself is a different widget, which is this. I think. No, maybe. Pan widget, yes. Oh no, so this is... The pan widget itself should be a canvas. No, it's not. It's what I put inside of it is a canvas. So the panning widget class is a canvas. So what I'm trying to get is the location of whatever I'm trying to move to from this thing's local space with its offset applied, right? And trying to figure out where that is on screen and where that screen position then is inside of this. And something may be going wrong there based on the zoom. Because the zoom isn't being applied universally to just the canvas. It's being applied separately to the canvas and the cursor, I think. Is that true? Because if that's true, that means that the background won't zoom. The background indeed does not zoom. Yeah, so the background doesn't zoom. But the zoom seems to pretty much be the same between the two elements, right? Like there's no weird drifting going on there. Hmm. Okay, so when I zoom, it gates me off from zooming again for a tenth of a second, which I probably did for a reason. Oh, because it's a trigger, I think. Yeah. So I should be able to hold down as well to like zoom in and out a couple of steps. Super relatable. I sound the same way working on my project. Thinking out loud helps so much. Yeah, it's all like rubber ducky principle, right? Where programmers get told buy a rubber ducky or anything of that sort, anything to talk to that you can put on your desk so that you have something to explain your problem to. Because the moment you start explaining your problem to somebody else, you probably will stumble across what's actually going wrong. So just like that's like creating that habit for yourself is breaking down, okay, so what actually is happening and what actually is going wrong. That is the skill of fixing bugs. Um, because once you know what's wrong, it's just a matter of writing code that works. Which also is part of like obviously a developed skill, but like writing code isn't the difficult part. It's figuring out why code doesn't work that is actually difficult. So yeah, just sounding it out loud. And again, this is also partly why I like streaming, because it's on one hand distracting, but on the other hand gives me a reason to sound it all out. But I also do this when I'm just developing on my own. It's part of the reason that I like making tutorials, because in order for me to make a tutorial about something, I need to have a deeper understanding about it than I would if I just were to use that feature. So it forces me to learn more and deeper and get better as a result of that. Usually I just talk my wife's ear off. I mean, that's that also works. Um, I just talk to myself, which is sometimes kind of awkward. Okay, so I think that it does just try to go to this position for some reason. Works fine in this zoom. If I zoom in like all the way, oh, that's what I was going to test. Yeah, if I hold down the button, it zooms in multiple steps. Um, but yeah, zoomed in all the way, it makes. I think what might be happening is when my zoom level gets below 1, it might be messing up some of this math. So let's print whatever new scale we're going at. Just in red. Because I feel like that might be part of the issue. I don't need to even unlock stuff anymore. I figured that out. It's the wrong thing. Okay, so we're at 0.4. Doesn't do it here yet. 0.3 is where it starts doing it. And then when I go back to 0.4... Oh, this is... Yeah, okay, so in order for it to feel like linear scaling, it's actually not linear scaling. It's scaling by a percentage every time. So it's not even consistent in the values that you get. Like, so you can see here, doesn't even get me back to a scale of 1. It gets me back to a scale of 1.17. And I zoom in again, it's 1.4. Zoom out again, it's 1.124. So the code that I took from a forum post, to be honest, for the panning widget for the zooming code is kind of built a little weird to, again, make it feel like it's actually linearly scaling up and down. Because if it is actually linear, the difference between 100 and 110 is visually more than the difference between 200 and 210. So when you're at 200%, to get the same perceived difference, you need to scale to 220. That makes the scaling feel linear. That's what's happening here. It's scaling by a percentage every time. But I feel like that's something that I want to change anyway. I just want to be able to scale from like 20% to like 150% in just 10% increments. I think that's more than fine. That's how I set up the... I actually redid the entire panning widgets in my skill tree course that I haven't recorded the videos yet, but I set up the reference project. I always, before I do a multi-part course, for individual videos as well, actually, I always make the thing first to have a reference project so that I have something to reference as I'm recording, and so that I know when I begin recording a video that I actually know what I'm working toward and that it works, right? That I don't get halfway through and think, oh shit, yeah, no, this actually doesn't work. Especially with courses, that's important, because I might have recorded like 3 videos and then come back to something that needs to be changed. And I don't like, personally, when I watch videos and tutorials and stuff like that, which obviously I also do. And they do something, and then 10 minutes later in the same video, or God forbid, in a follow-up video, they go back and change something because they like made a mistake, something didn't work. I try to avoid doing that, and when I do have that happen, I make a like specific point of it to, in the moment, cut into the video to say, hey, something got messed up here. This is the solution. It's a very long-winded way of saying that I have an entire like skill tree project already made and ready to start recording. I'm probably going to record the videos for it this weekend or over the next week or something like that. But I did my panning widgets somewhat differently in there, and it took me like half a day to mess around with and figure out a better way to do that. Partly because I ran into some issues with this panning widget before, and also partly because I feel like the way that this is set up is overly complicated in some ways, and the way that I have now adjusted it to be in my like new projects for the tutorial series, it's a lot more straightforward, a lot less weird math, a lot easier stuff to explain. So I simplified a lot of it. And I think a lot of the issues that we're having here with the zooming stuff might also just be solved if I change over the code in this project to work the same way that I did in the tutorials that I made. So I might just do that and see if that fixes itself, because I'll need to rewrite a bunch of this stuff anyway. Issue is I don't have the reference project right now at hand, because that's in my Linux OS, and I'm on Windows right now. So I'll need to open up Linux, copy over the folder structure for that project into a shared drive that Windows can also access, and then open it on Windows to rebuild it. But I can't do that right now because, again, I need to reboot the PC and can't do that because I'm live. So yeah, I think that's where we're gonna leave it then for right now. I will probably just tinker around with this a little bit myself over the weekend. I'll be recording some videos over the weekend. I don't know 100% the ins and outs of everything that I'm going to be doing over the weekend, but it's going to be a lot. I'm also going to be probably tinkering around with my little Godot project that was an option to stream today. I might stream that stuff next week because I can show it off real quick, probably. Let's see. I'm way over engineering something for myself, but it's also just because it's a fun little project. I was potentially going to stream this. Hold on, that's the wrong version of Godot. Today, but I did a poll on the Discord and people wanted me to bug fix, which makes sense because obviously most people here are probably here for Unreal content and I'm for Godot content. So I can't blame you for that. But I've been making this like little tool that I want to be able to use to draw out my maps. Because long story short, I'm effectively just like making paint. But these things aren't like, this is not a square that has a color. I can move it around, by the way. But it is assigned an index to this color palette. So now when I change this color palette, it like changes this in real time as well, which is kind of neat. And I can just say, well, now I want to do one from this palette and I want from this palette and so on and so forth. And I've been building a details panel as well, so you can see that I can move these when playing around with the details panel. I need to improve the detail panel for them. I can rotate them. All that kind of like good stuff. So the idea being is that I want to be able to use this like internal tool effectively to draw out my entire like dungeon layout for the whole game, because I've got this thing. I might make a devlog about this at some point once this tool is a little bit more developed. But the game is becoming more and more Metroidvania, and I'm kind of just leaning into that because at this point I'm like, that's what the game wants to be, and that's what'll make it, I guess. But that means that I need to think a little bit more about what parts of the game are accessible with what sets of abilities. And that's why I'm making this tool, so that I can have something where I can draw out my world map and give every door, I don't have a way to draw doors yet, but I will. So just imagine for a second that blue is a door. So every door I would be able to like click on this and tell you, you can only access this door in this room if you have this ability. And from there, what I can do is start at the central room and just go through, search every subsequent room and check, do I have this ability? I'll just like make a checkbox menu here saying, okay, I want to see if I have double jump, air dash, and grappling, which rooms will be accessible to me. And that way I can make the code check which rooms are accessible and which rooms aren't. So I can very easily check, okay, if I have this ability and this ability, does that mean that I can get to a place that I'm not like supposed to be able to get? Do I need to add in another like roadblock ability in another room? So that way I can more clearly design the flow and the path, multiple paths, to be fair, potentially, throughout the game with some amount of certainty, a little more certainty at least, that I'm not overlooking something super obvious where you can just skip half the game. You won't be able to skip half the game anyway because you need to defeat all 6 bosses regardless. But where you can get into areas that you're quote unquote not supposed to before getting a certain ability through a like different routes. And I was drawing these maps out in Affinity Designer before and Photoshop and those kind of things. And at some point I used Inkscape. But obviously I can't like code in those like almost tag-based filtering options because it goes a lot deeper than just tags. It's not just can I reach this room with this ability and this ability and this ability, because then I would need to manually assign it as well. I want to know, okay, this room has a couple of exits. This exit is only reachable once you have this ability, meaning that everything beyond this room is not reachable unless you have that ability. But what if we also have a room here that has a different ability that you need to get to this door? Then suddenly, if we just move these things along, and we have this room being here, right? This room is now reachable if you have either this ability or this ability. So this room would light up if I have either one of those things like checked off in my check menu. Similarly, if we were to do something, I can't scale these things yet. If we were to do something where we have something like this, right? Let's say this is the double jump and this is the grapple. If I have a double jump, we get to this room. My code checks this box, says, oh, you have double jump, you can get to here. But you don't have the grapple, so you can't get to here. But once again, maybe we also, well, that's confusing. Let's not do that. We also have a different route here that instead of requiring the grapple, so this this was double jump, this is grapple. This might be just wall jump, and this might be no ability. So I can get to this room if I have double jump and grapple, or just the wall jump. And I need to write like my code in such a way that it like actually goes through and checks each of these doors until they reach a dead end. So that I can have a good overview of, okay, is my dungeon design kind of like watertight in a way? Am I not skipping out on anything? So yeah, that's what I've been working on in like my little Godot project. Again, this is way over engineered. This is me effectively creating a whole fucking, well, not a drawing app. I'm just going to be drawing boxes. But it's me creating something that is way over engineered for what I'm trying to do. But I honestly, like, I don't know what else I can do aside from just kind of like hoping that I don't mess up while just drawing it in Photoshop or Affinity Designer. Which, I mean, sure. I guess that's a possibility. But I kind of prefer being able to like write these things out and also have, when I select one of these doors, when I actually implement the door things, when I click on it, being able to see what other doors they connect to. Well, it's only going to be one door, but like draw a line between connecting doors and that kind of thing. Just having an interactive map builder for internal use to build out my world map, because at this point, I'm kind of like laid back a little bit on the main game development for a couple of different reasons. For probably the next like month or two, I'm bug fixing, I'm tweaking stuff, I'm doing I'm doing some boss fights polish, reworking the boss fights, improving the boss fights that I have right now. But I'm unlikely to like go through and start like actual like hard development on the next dungeon and so on and so forth, because what I have right now needs more thorough testing. We're going to get to that within the next couple of weeks, hopefully. But the dungeon as I have it right now is very much like a demo build of the game. It's not actually a build of the first dungeon, I realized. Because I have a video coming out about this too, but I have 4 ability unlocks within 14 rooms, which is way too dense. So it serves as a general like taste of this is what the game could be like, condensed. But once the actual game itself needs to like be just the game, a lot of the things that are built the way they are right now need to be changed in order to accommodate for either this just being a late game dungeon and not having the unlocks in the way that they do, but a lot of the layout as I have it right now is very leaned in toward getting the 4 abilities that exist in a specific order and fairly linearly. So a lot of this dungeon itself needs to be reworked as well. And if I'm going to do that, what I want to do before I actually start building any of the like finalized levels for the game, for like the final version, the production version of the game, I want to have the entire world map laid out so that I don't like start building something without knowing where everything could lead. The initial idea of the game was that it was effectively an open world game, right? It's not open world as in Skyrim where everything is open. There's no loading. Well, Skyrim has loading screens, but a hypothetical 2025 version of Skyrim where there's effectively no loading screens. That not open world in that sense, but an open world as in you get dropped into the middle of the map and you can just go through these dungeons in any order that you want, and the game scales dynamically through the bosses that you defeat. I'm changing that. The game is not necessarily going to be super linear, but it's going to lean more into Metroidvania direction, meaning that I have to be much more mindful of how setting something up, like unlocking an ability in one area, will impact your navigability of different areas. So I need to build the layout of my game in such a way where I am cognizant of which abilities you have at what time. It's fine if you come back to an earlier area and you're easily going through it in a way that you couldn't before with your new abilities. What I don't want is accessing too wide of an area too quickly, because that gets, again, it's the Hollow Knight problem. Hollow Knight gives you too wide of an area too quickly, and that becomes intimidating. That's where a lot of people actually drop the game, and Silksong does that a lot better. It widens a lot slower. And I want to make sure that I don't like step into that pitfall. So I need to design the layout of all my rooms before actually starting to build them. And if I want to do that properly, I need to be able to like have this dynamic builder, I figure. So I've started working on this a little bit. Obviously, it needs a lot more work than it has right now. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to revamp the details panel, because right now these details only really work for specifically, you can give them names, by the way. Like if you click on them, they remember names as well. They only really work for specifically rooms, because they very hard coded have a name box and a position box and a rotation box, which was all linked back with delegates or signals, as Godot calls them, to actually update the drawing of the shape and that kind of stuff. But once I start introducing doors, when I click on a door, obviously that has different detail panel related stuff as well. So these detail panels need to start becoming more dynamic based on like what I click on and that kind of stuff. I need to start introducing the ability to actually like differently scale these things, because right now I can't do that. To be able to rotate them with a widget instead of just through this as well. So there's a bunch of stuff that I still need to do, and I kind of figure that yeah, it's not unreal, but I'd like to advocate for use the best tool for the job, right? And I think that Godot, as even Steven says in chat, like Godot is decent for quick tools like this. It's like pretty good for this. I tried to make a 2D game with it before, and I kind of like bashed my head against it until I was like, nope. Because the thing that I ran into at the time was, I think I couldn't expose a like custom struct to the editor. I couldn't like export that or something like that. To be fair, I was also using C#. I've kind of bit the bullet at this point, and I'm using GDScript because it feels like Godot just really kind of wants you to use GDScript. Feels like it's a lot smoother. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like indentation being part of your syntax. Again, that's the reason that I get really annoyed anytime. I asked like ChatGPT for something like, what about like making a quick tool that does this? And it's like, you can use Python. I'm like, I don't want to use Python. But I kind of bit the bullet on it. And to be fair, it's not actually that bad. I've gone through it. I'm used to it now. Which actually makes me think, is can I, in GDScript, now export a custom struct that I made? Well, I think I understand what the problem is now, by the way. Because the reason that you can't export and expose custom structs is because Godot doesn't have structs. Or GDScript doesn't have structs, rather. The way that Godot makes you do that is just with an object. Like it doesn't have a difference between the two of those. So I have this like room details thing. Nope, that's the details panel. Room data, right? So this is effectively a struct, and I started adding in functions because if it's a class, might as well do that, right? And I have like the signal here, but it started out as just this is the data for a room. I wanted to make a struct, but I asked ChatGPT and I looked around a little bit, and Godot just doesn't deal with structs. So that's the reason probably why when I was doing my C# version of like working with Godot, I think last year, maybe earlier this year. I think it was last year. I really got hung up on this. I have this struct and I can't expose it. That's like super bullshit. Because Godot just doesn't deal with structs. And like honestly, like if you just have this, I guess that's kind of fine as well, maybe. It still seemed limiting because you can't expose this still to the editor. So there is room for improvement. But for the project that I'm working on right now, I don't need a bunch of like exported stuff within like this detail panel because I'm making like my own app with my own fucking details panel. So I can just read the data and put it into these. This is the thing that matters for me right now. So that's not as big of a deal. Structs are coming, as I understand. I mean, hopefully that does become easier, because again, I do think that not being able to throw a couple of variables into a struct and expose that struct to like your editor is a major downside. At which point I'm like, you can't expect me to use this as an engine. At that point, what I have to do is like make a data object, expose that, and make a bunch of assets with different values to give in, instead of just being able to like fill in the individual values on a per like instance basis. It's not getting in my way right now, but it's not like I'm through the issues that I had with Godot, and I'm going to be like super pro Godot. I'm still pro Godot, don't get me wrong. But the biggest major issue that made me stop that experiment within Godot was the struct thing, because I think that is a basic feature that you should have if you like are a game engine. But if they're working on that, that would be nice. That is legitimately one of the like cornerstone points where I'm like, I can't really recommend Godot that much. If they fix that, it's one of the few things where I'm like, it's getting in my way of recommending it. It's not gonna change over my engine mainly to Godot, but like I might do more side projects in it, and I might make some more videos on it if it starts being something that I feel more comfortable recommending. But yeah, that's the thing that I've been working on in Godot, and it feels like that might be fun to also stream. So maybe I'll do that next week. Again, probably a little far removed from what I usually do, so I very much expect a lot of people to like skip out on that stream, and that's fine. But if you're watching right now, and there's still 9 people watching, even though I'm just rambling and not doing anything, so hello. Clearly you care enough to not have clicked off yet, so maybe when I'm live next week, give it a watch. See me working on this thing in real time. And Retro Dave is back just in time for me to end the stream. Your timing is fantastic. I'll try to be back on Tuesday. No promises. I'm live whenever I can be. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't. Again, I've been getting like down with a cold a little bit. If it gets worse, I'm going to be live, that's for sure. If it gets better, it's going to be less of an issue, keeping me from getting work done, which means I have more time to stream and stuff. So we'll see. I'm going to try on Tuesday, Friday, whatever. Just keep an eye on either the Discord or the YouTube feed, and you'll see. Probably working on this. Maybe on something else, I don't know. Do you have Discord? Yeah, there's a... Oh, cold water is so fucking nice. There's a link in the description of this stream. It might be an old link in this stream. I don't know, because it just uses the default template that I use for streaming. If the link in the stream description doesn't work, you can always just effectively go to any of the recent videos, because every video in the description has a link to the Discord as well, I believe. So yeah, if you want to come like hang in Discord, and that's also a better way of keeping up to date with both uploads and live streams and that kind of stuff than YouTube, because YouTube is very inconsistent at actually pushing out stuff even to people that are subscribed. Discord's quite good. Been a bad supporter, but love the channel. Nobody's a bad supporter. If you watch the stuff, and hell, maybe give it a like and a subscribe, you do everything that you can be expected to do. So no such thing as bad support. Yeah, so I've had some people have issues with the Discord link before. If you Again, the one in the description for the stream might just be old and not work. If the ones in more recent video descriptions don't work either, there's been some people that have found certain browsers don't like Discord invitation links. Like I think Opera was an issue at some point or whatever. But like Firefox, Chrome, those should work. So YouTube is getting bad, yeah. Not like we have a better alternative. So yeah, if you care enough about staying up to date, like I've just got an auto ping every time I upload a video. Feel free to obviously mute the notifications for the server because you're gonna get like 6 notifications a week out of that. Totally get if that's annoying. Still need to look into seeing if I can make that like assigned to a role in Discord instead, but it's one of those things that's like I need to do it at some point. But I'll see. Again, I'm out. I'm heading out. It worked great. I'll see you back next time, and you guys have a good weekend. Bye.